Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast on this 5th of May 2018 as we discuss the world of sports and pop culture. As always, the call number is 347-215-6180. We are also live on YouTube as well for my YouTube audience, so you can catch us there, as well live, and certainly when the program is over, catch the immediate program on again this 5th day of May 2018, Cinco de Mayo. Is it de Mayo? De Mayo, de Mayo. I have ways of just messing up names, so don't Cinco de Mayo. It's Cinco de Mayo. So anyways, we'll be here for the next 60 minutes discussing the world of sports and pop culture. As always, the call number is 347-215-6180. You can follow me on Twitter at William Gerald, or go to my Instagram page at RIL Gerald Quinn. Apple, iTunes as well. We're everywhere. Stitcher, iTunes. Look up Real Deal Podcast. So check us out there on a plethora of platforms. We're going to begin with the association, where all of a sudden the NBA playoffs have come back to reality, and things kind of are going according to plan. If we had looked at basically the beginning of the season, you think about it. Beginning of the season, you would have said the Final Four. The Final Four would be Golden State, Houston, Boston, Cleveland. That's what you would have said would have been the Final Four teams. And after last night, it certainly feels like, and I would say after the last 20, 48, 36 hours, it certainly feels like, or 48 hours, it certainly feels like we are headed in that direction as the Houston Rockets reasserted their dominance back and reasserted control of that series with just a basic toying of the Utah Jazz 113-92. You also had Golden State give its obligatory, we don't care about this particular playoff game performance, and fall into the Pelicans 119 to 100 in a game that Golden State seemingly barely tried after the second quarter, coming out of halftime. Barely seemed like they didn't, they were just going through emotions. You had a big time performance from Anthony Davis, who finally broke out in this series with 33-18. And Rajon Rondo, again, who has been brilliant offensively in the playoffs, 21 assists, 10 rebounds. And then forget about how many points he had, because he's not there to score points. He's not there to score. They have enough scoring. But 10 rebounds, 21 assists. And now you have a couple of game threes today, or this afternoon into the evening, with Boston traveling to Philadelphia. That crowd will be insane down there at the Wells Fargo Center. In Philadelphia. And Toronto, Cleveland. I don't expect anything out of Toronto at this point. Considering what happened, really, I mean, forget about game two. This series was over in game one in regards to Toronto, Cleveland. You can lose a series in game one. I've seen it happen before. I saw it happen in the '95 '95 NBA Finals with Orlando and Houston. Orlando blew like a 20-point lead. Kenny Smith hits the three to send the game into overtime, and Olajuwon takes over. And next thing you know, Houston is sweeping their way to a second consecutive championship. So a young, fragile team, and I wouldn't even consider Toronto to be young. They're just fragile, going up against a machine in regards to LeBron James. I just want to dispel this notion, because I've heard this a lot over the past two series when Cleveland has been playing, that the idea that Indiana and Toronto are better teams than Cleveland is the most. And again, I'm surprised people have not been called out in terms of saying this, and I don't understand why they haven't been called out. That you think about it. Let's put Indiana aside because they're not playing anymore. But let's just focus in on Toronto. If the Toronto general manager Jerry was approached and someone said, hypothetically, by Cleveland, they said, "Hey, we'll give you LeBron in return for Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, and Valanciunas. Would you make that deal?" You know how fast Jerry would make that deal? You know how he would have them, they would be on a red eye to Cleveland. Okay. So LeBron, and my point being, LeBron's worth about three of Toronto's players. He's worth their three best players. After we get past that, we're talking about, you know, you're talking about guys like an aging Serge Ibaka who can't play anymore. Clear he's not even close to being the player he was with OKC just 2 years ago. Fred Van Vliet, Yuri Hurdle. You're talking about some. I mean, you're talking about role players. I mean, what are we talking about here with Toronto? I mean, Cleveland does have inconsistent guys, but they are veteran. They are playoff proven. I mean, I've seen J.R. Smith have big games. I've seen J.R. Smith play well in the game seven in the NBA Finals to win a championship. I've seen Kevin Love in big games in the playoffs play well at times. So again, I don't understand when did this start, or maybe is this? I don't get it. I'm trying to say if this is a way to kind of like push the LeBron greatest of all time argument. That's what I think this is. To be honest with you, I think this is a way to just say, look how bad this team is. Look what he's doing. Again, he's been unreal in the playoffs. I'm not taking away from his performance, but to me, when you start saying stuff like this, I mean, people are making this team out to be like an expansion team. I'm like, the team is not a bad team. I mean, I think, I think they are his weakest team since he got to Cleveland. I'm not talking about the first. I'm not even talking about the first. His first stint. I'm talking about the second stint. I think this is his weakest team because there's no Kyrie Irving. But in comparison to like the rest of the Eastern Conference, minus Philadelphia, Cleveland clearly to me is the best team in the conference. Outside of Philadelphia in terms of talent. If we're talking strictly talent, I still would take Cleveland's roster over any other roster in the playoffs right now outside of the Sixers roster. So again, I don't get the notion that this team that Indiana had more talent or that Toronto has more talent. I told you about Toronto. This is what I said about Toronto. I told you about this weeks ago. It doesn't matter. Their role players don't matter in the playoffs in terms of their bench players. Everybody's talking about the Toronto depth and how, DeRozan and Lowry don't have to do as much and they can kind of like just not, let the game come to them, not force stuff, not so much isolation, pace and space. I kept hearing all these, all this new Toronto talk. Bench players are designed to get you to the postseason to where your stars are somewhat rested. Okay, that's what bench players are designed to do, to keep your stars rested going to the postseason. If you're lucky, you might be able to trust two of them come playoff time. If you're lucky, maybe only one. Rotations are cut once the playoffs start. So the idea, it doesn't. This is not college basketball. It doesn't matter about having a deep bench in the playoffs. It doesn't. Golden State is not deep. They have about 8 guys that they trust. You got your starting five. You have Andre. You got Iguodala, Livingston, David West. Those are the 8 guys that they trust. Now you might see time to time, Quentin Cook or some other guys, but they have 8 guys that they trust in crunch time. 8. That's it. Most teams trust anywhere from 7 to 8 guys come playoff time. You're not going 9, 10, 11, 12 deep. That doesn't win. Stars win in the playoffs. And that to me is the biggest thing about Toronto. Toronto just doesn't have that dude. They don't have that dude. DeRozan and Lowry are very good players. They've been perennial all-stars. Maybe DeRozan has a shot at the Hall of Fame if he continues to compile the numbers that he's been compiling. We've seen worse players get in the Hall of Fame, in the Basketball Hall of Fame. But you have to have, in order to advance farther to the playoffs, to make it to the finals, you have to have a superstar caliber player. It's just that simple. You gotta have a LeBron. You gotta have a Kobe. You gotta have, Steph Curry, Durant. You gotta have that type of player to make it to the finals, to get to the finals, and to be a champion, a legit championship contender. 347-215-6180 is your call number. Just getting started here on this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. When we come back, I want to talk more about Philly, Boston, because there's a couple things that came out of that, again, I don't understand as far as criticism goes and as far as the way people are talking about this series. We're going to talk about that, today's headlines, a bunch of stuff going on in the world of sports. Power trailer came out. I'm caught up on Atlanta, so we'll get into that and much, much more on this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. We'll be good afternoon, I should say. We'll be right back. I was just 347-215-6180 is the call number. So if you're looking at my looking at me watching me on YouTube right now, and I can see myself live here on YouTube. You want to understand why I wear a hat when I'm doing a live video, whether it's Facebook or YouTube. Just look at my forehead on YouTube. Look at my forehead. Now, again, I still have most of my hair. I got about 95% of my hair, maybe 98%. But on a platform like YouTube, that missing 2 to 5%, it really gets exposed. So that's why I always wear a hat. A Scully. It's too hot for a Scully at this point, and I don't have my hair on. So that's the reason why I wear a hat, because I don't like the way my head looks on this live platform of either YouTube or Facebook Live. People ask me sometimes, why you wear a hat during live videos? This is why I wear a hat. This is why. This is the reason why. So in regards to Boston and Philadelphia, again, Philadelphia blowing a golden opportunity to tie the series with losing a 22-point lead, and you knew what was coming at the end of the first half when they had a big lead, and that lead got cut down basically to like 5 points by halftime. You could see that comeback coming a mile away. Give Boston a lot of credit. And I think that, to me, this is where people are missing the boat with this series and missing the point with this particular series. It's not about what Philly is not doing as in comparisons to what Boston is doing. Boston right now, outside of Golden State, probably has the best culture in the NBA. I brought that and I bring that up. That's been my theme. That was my theme to solve the playoffs. Culture, coaching, chemistry. Okay. They have all those areas covered and then some. They have a dominant coach who once Greg Popovich retires, whenever that is, will be the lead coach in this. It will be the best coach by far in this league, in Brad Stevens. Clearly, the chemistry is great because they can shuffle guys in and out. Guys are injured, it doesn't matter. They plug in a guy. That guy does his job, or comes close to doing the job of the guy that he replaced. Terry Rozier, case in point. So they have all these things covered to a T, and this is the number one reason why they are up 2-0 over the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, we also have to keep this in mind about the Sixers and about the history of the NBA. And sometimes, listen, I want in the worst way not to see a Golden State Cleveland NBA Finals. I just can't. To me, It's kind of like we've seen this movie before. LeBron carries a team to the finals. They get smashed in the finals. I'm tired of seeing that movie. I understand. Remember 2016, Draymond Green doesn't pick up the technical foul. Golden State is going for would be going for a four-peat. Okay, possibly a four-peat. So I don't want to see that movie again. That's why I've been so high on the Sixers throughout the course of this postseason, going as far as saying that I would picking them to get to the finals even before the postseason began. Got excited, once they handled their business against Miami. They've absolutely come back down to earth, and this is the nature of the NBA in terms of the NBA is like an apprenticeship. You don't go from mediocre to championship. It just doesn't happen. You can go from mediocre to making the playoffs, especially in the Eastern Conference. That can easily happen. But you don't go from mediocre to NBA Finals. That rarely, if all happens. Again, you gotta go back to like the New Jersey Nets when they made the Marbury to Phoenix, and the Nets got Jason Kidd. They went to back-to-back finals. That's how far you gotta go back in order to see something like that happen. And mind you, the Eastern Conference was not as bad as it is now, but it wasn't great. It was okay. It was average, but not as bad as it is now because there was no like the Eastern Conference now is it's a joke, or it has been a joke. It's actually decent this year, but for the most part, Eastern Conference over the past 4 to 5 years, or the past 6 or 7 years, especially as LeBron James has just cut through it like cut through it, year in and year out, has been mediocre to say the least. So you don't go through the NBA, you don't get to a championship after being one of the worst franchises in the NBA for the better part of the last 4 to 5 years. The process, Sam Hinkie, the whole bit. So the Sixers are taking their lumps right now, but and I give Brett Brown a lot of credit. That doesn't mean you overreact and not play your best players. So Brett Brown takes a lot of heat for reinserting his best player, Ben Simmons, who is his best player, okay, back into the lineup, back into the game in the fourth quarter with about 5:29 left. Again, Ben Simmons had a bad game, had 1 point, only took 4 shots, was, you know, was not a big factor, was a non-factor in terms of him impacting the game, and hasn't played well this series. But if you're Brett Brown, first of all, when he re-entered the game with 5:29 left, it was 93-91. It's not like you were up by 20 points. Okay, you're up by 2 points. The comeback has already basically been complete by the Boston Celtics. That 22-point lead dissipated. So now is game on at this point. And the idea that you're going to sacrifice his minutes for T.J. McConnell. I mean, give me a break here. T.J. McConnell barely is barely. I mean, barely is in the rotation at this point, and has been in rotation even in the playoffs. So I'm not taking out my best player. I don't care how much he struggles for a fringe rotation guy. You're not winning this series because of T.J. McConnell. You're either going to win it or lose this series based on how Ben Simmons plays, based on how much he can impact the game. This team moves how Ben Simmons moves. Like, Embiid can get 30 and 15 easily. He can get 30 and 15, 4 blocks, you know. But this team is going to go as far as Ben Simmons takes them. If Ben Simmons is playing well, is dominant, they'll get to the finals. If not, then they'll go home. It's just that simple. And again, you're Brett Brown. Remember, you as a coach, you as an organization, you have to think about. Sometimes you have to sacrifice short-term success for long-term gain. So this guy is going to be the future and the president of my franchise. He is a generational talent. Right now, he is our best option, easily. Forget about T.J. McConnell. You're not winning games because of T.J. McConnell. So I'm not going to do anything to even remotely touch or damage this guy's confidence. Like I'm not taking. I'm not, like if I'm going to go down, I'm going down with Ben Simmons. And if you want to say, well, during that Miami series, there were moments where Embiid wasn't on the floor when the Sixers would make their runs. Yeah, but you gotta keep in mind that amplifies my point. Ben Simmons makes is the straw that stirs the Sixers drink. He makes them go. Okay, kind of like Magic and Kareem. Kareem was winning championship. Kareem had won a championship, had been an MVP, was a dominant player, was the best player in the decade of the '70s. But they weren't. But when he got to LA, they wasn't. They didn't win a championship without Magic Johnson. Before Magic Johnson got there, when Kareem was with the Lakers, it wasn't until Magic got there that Magic was clear. It was clear that who was driving the engine, and that's the same thing to me with Simmons and Embiid. Embiid can put up numbers, but it is Simmons who pushes that team who takes that team to another level. It's Ben Simmons, and it's clearly Ben Simmons. And if I'm Brett Brown, and I can give Brett Brown a lot of credit amidst just ridiculous criticism, that's my guy. Not only for this playoff series, but for the future of the near and distant future of this franchise. That's who I'm rolling with. So I give Brett Brown a lot of credit for doing something that maybe maybe other coaches would have pulled the trigger on Simmons and not brought him back in that fourth quarter. I want to make it clear to Ben Simmons, and he doesn't need help with his confidence. He's one of the most like Ben Simmons thinks he's the best player on the court. He's a confident. He is a alpha male as far as confidence goes, in regards to being on the basketball court. But I want to give him just even add on to that and say, hey, you're my guy, you're our franchise. We're gonna either win or lose with you, and that will have a long term effect. That will even be more valuable than even winning this playoff series. 347-215-6180 is the call number. When we return, we will have today's headlines, that and much, much more in this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. We'll be right back. 347-215-6180 is your call number on the Real Deal Podcast. 58 minutes, excuse me, 53 minutes after the 12 o'clock hour on this Cinco de Mayo's 5th of May. Finally, the weather starting to cooperate. Today should be a perfect day in regards to the definitely in regards to the DMV. Probably somewhere in the low 70s, low 70s. I'm not ready. And again, you can never please people, myself included, in regards to the weather. Last Sunday I was coming from the radio station last Sunday, and it was cold. I mean, this is like, I want to say what time was it? Probably like 5 o'clock, 5:30 ish. Probably like 5:30. The game had a baseball game that ran a little long, a little long. As a matter of fact, I think the Nat even might have been even the Nationals were playing. Anyway, game ran a little long. Came out the studio about 5:30, 6 o'clock. It's 50 degrees. I have a hoodie on, no hat. I think I had it with no hat. And I'm like, I'm cold. I'm like, why? And think about it. I'm like, why am I cold in this April, late April at that? You're talking about terms of it's April 28th, either 28th or 29th. Now all of a sudden, you know, Tuesday, Wednesday, we've gone from January to August. in 2 days in regards to this weather. You're looking at 90-degree days, and now you're having those situations where where the heat is just draining your energy. Like you're not supposed to feel this way until the June, July, August, and feeling this way in May. So hopefully the weather. It seems like the weather is going to settle in for the next couple of days at that 70, that's 65, 68 to 75 degrees, which is perfect for spring. And hopefully, we'll get some rain. Might get some rain today, but I cannot deal with the 90s in May. Just can't do it. But we'll see. We'll make it through here on this 5th of May. Today's headlines: Matt Harvey, the pitcher formerly known as the Dark Knight, has been designated for assignment by the New York Mets. They will have, of course, 7 days to either they will have 7 days to outright cut him, or to outright release him, or he'll go as he refuses to go to the minors. So they have 7 days to just outright release him, so he can be, if so, he would be a outright free agent at that standpoint. The thing I thought about when I heard the story, which you could see coming a mile away at the beginning of the season, was this guy is never going to get his money. And in the sports climate where we talk about guys being overpaid for the most part, and all the especially in baseball along with basketball in terms of are probably the two highest paid sports in terms of the four major sports by far. Baseball and basketball are basketball probably has taken over for baseball, considering the new jump in some of these television contracts for the NBA. But they're pretty much neck and neck. Baseball operates on a system where it takes a long time to become an outright free agent. Like it takes at least minimum 6 years to become a free agent. In basketball, guys it takes 5 years. But consider this: basketball players on average are much younger coming into the NBA than baseball players. Okay, unless you are like an Alex Rodriguez, a Bryce Harper, a Ken Griffey Jr. back in the day. Unless you are just a teenage phenom, you're not. Most baseball players are not coming in until 20, 23, 24, 25, 22, somewhere in that range. And even if let's say Matt Harvey came in, I'll pull up his stats here, pull up his numbers. Matt Harvey came in at the age of 23, made his debut in 2013. He becomes now by the NBA. If Matt Harvey were a professional basketball player, and you're looking at his numbers, he had a big year. He basically had 2 good years in his career: 2013, 2015. Didn't pitch in 2014 with the injury, of course the elbow injury. He had with his arm injury. Didn't pitch in 2014. So he's 9-5 in 2013, 2.27 ERA. Comes back 2015, 13-8. 2.71 ERA, 2.71 ERA. Now, in the NBA, Matt Harvey, after that, in the summer of 2015, would have gotten a 5-year, $150 million extension. He would have got a max extension. Because at that point, people thought especially in New York, thought he could be the next, possibly Tom Seaver. Instead, he gets his arbitration bump, which guys of his ilk normally get. If you have a couple good years, he gets an arbitration bump in 2015 from $614,000 to $4.3 million. So in 2016 he made $4.3 million, 5.1 in 2017, and this year he made $5.6 million. Now again, nothing to sneeze at. He's made almost $17 million in his career. 16.8. It's nothing to sneeze at. But again, he will never, ever receive that 6 year, $200 million, 7 year, $180 million contract that a pitcher of his potential normally would have received. Normally would have received. Or keep in mind, Homer Bailey from Cincinnati got $100 million contract. Homer Bailey. Now, unlike Matt Harvey, Homer Bailey was able to stay relatively healthy, but not even a fraction. But Homer Bailey didn't even have a does not even have a fraction of the talent that Matt Harvey had. But that's how baseball operates. That's how that is baseball. I would say baseball more than any other sport gets more bang for their buck in regards to even with their star players, because keep in mind again, the majority of players are going to have their best years from ages say 21 to 29, 22 to 29, 23 to 30. Once guys, and it's been proven, especially considering now that steroids is basically almost out the game. I still think you have some guys juicing, but not to the level in which they were during that Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa era. Not during Roger Clemens included. So steroids has basically somewhat been taken out of the game. Now you have guys who once they approach the 29, 30 years old actually start to fall off. Albert Pujols records hit number 3,000. Pujols now 38. Joins a select company to have 3,000 hits along with 600 home runs. Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, and Alex Rodriguez. I would say this about Albert Pujols, and now again, he is a shell of the player he once was, and he still amazingly has, 3 years left on that 10-year deal he signed. That 10-year deal he signed with the Angels a few years back. 3 years, about $88 million left on that contract. That contract, he'll be 41 when that contract concludes. But if you're the Angels, at this point, you have Trout, you have some nice young talent. Angels have played well this season. Uh, I would if I were starting a team over the course of the last 20, 25 years, I'd probably have to say Albert Pujols would be my number one pick, putting pitchers aside in terms of positional players, over Bonds, over Manny Ramirez, over Ken Griffey, over Alex Rodriguez. He would be that number one pick. The level of consistency, his postseason, he's been dominant. 323 lifetime in the postseason, 19 home runs in the postseason. A guy who has we've seen him hit 3 home runs in the World Series game. Never was, never was hurt. Year in, year out was like really like LeBron James, like in terms of just robotic consistency. To be honest with you. So even though I think Bonds and A-Rod have probably more talent, and I thought Griffey had more natural talent, those guys, Griffey couldn't stay healthy the latter part of his career. Bonds was shaky in the postseason, -1, -2002, and you know, A-Rod I think was also shaky in the postseason as well, minus say 2009. So those guys. So I think if you are building a team over the past again 20 25 years, that Albert Pujols would have to probably be your number one pick. Kentucky Derby today, 144th annual Run for the Roses, one of the most prestigious sporting events that we have here in North America, without question. They do a tremendous job at setting up at. First of all, it's well over 100,000 people there. You will see your share of celebrities also in the mix. I'm sure. I know Tom Brady has shown up a few times there. Gronkowski has a doesn't. I don't think Gronkowski's horse is in the mix, but you'll see a number of guys from the world of entertainment and sports and other sports who have stake, who have ownership in horses, in the horses, be there as well. But again, one of the most recognizable events, sporting events in the country. You can put it up there with any, the Masters, or any other sporting event that takes place in North America. for the Kentucky Derby again, and we used to remember. It wasn't long ago that we used to have our old friend Alex Brown break down the races. Alex, of course, moved back to the UK, so he's back in the UK now, so he wasn't able to join us for the past couple of years. Used to do a tremendous job. Has wrote a book on Barbaro. He used to do a tremendous job with that. But to me, I only get into the Derby. I can only for the casual fan to get into the Kentucky Derby, there has to be a dominant horse. There has to be a California Chrome or American Pharaoh, a horse who legitimately has a chance to win a Triple Crown. Does not seem to be the case with any of these particular horses, though you have a couple of horses that are coming in that are undefeated, which is not not that much. It's not uncommon for an undefeated horse to come into the Kentucky Derby, but there doesn't seem to be a dominant horse. Big Brown, Smarty Jones, a horse like that has the ability to captivate the horse racing audience, or let alone the casual audience in terms of this event. Again, American Pharaoh won the Triple Crown 3 years ago. California Chrome a year earlier came close, winning the first two legs. So it doesn't seem to be a horse of that ilk in this particular race. But again, it probably will get a decent rating, and I'm sure again for the horse racing fan who for the betting fan, it is a dream for if you're a racing fan, or if you want somebody who wants to just bet on the sport, who wants to just make a bet. It's a good day for you. 347-215-6180 is your call number. When we return, we will talk about the return of Kanye West and much, much more on this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. We'll be right back. 347-215-6180 is your call number on this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. These fans in the NBA fans in particular, and I definitely wanted to talk about this. The fans gotta get it, gotta get a grip here. Like nobody comes, and I'm talking about what transpired in Utah. Well, not in Utah. What transpired? I think it was in Houston. With James Harden, a fan, not only was forget about he called him the biggest flopper in the league. Nobody cares about that. At least James Harden shouldn't care about that. But the idea that you leave your seat and then try to stick your phone in a guy's face or close to a player and think that that player is not going to respond, you're losing your mind. First of all, and I'm glad there were two black security guards who was like, no, sir, your seat is over there. Basically, go sit your ass down, sit your ass in your seat, and this would not have happened. That's exactly what they said. Had you been sitting in your seat, this would not have happened. So if you're recording James Harden, which you in your seat, you're sitting there, and you have your phone, and you see James Harden. He's not coming over the railing or coming close to you to slap the phone out of your hands. It doesn't happen. And I think fans are starting to get too comfortable with the fact that they pay a lot of money for a ticket, or the fact that maybe they feel like just because these guys are making tens of millions of dollars, that they can say or do anything to them. Now, the Russell Westbrook situation, I put that squarely on Westbrook myself. I think Westbrook easily could have walked into the tunnel and kept it moving. Especially the first time where the first time, there was no recording device. The guy just, made some comments, and he responded to it. The second time, a little bit different. There was a recording device, but Westbrook still could have easily walked away and just walked into the tunnel. Westbrook didn't even bring up the recording device in the press conference. He just mentioned that basically fans, he's tired of fans thinking they could say whatever they wanted to say, in his words, whatever the hell they wanted to say to him, and get away with it. That's basically he was annoyed with. Harden's to me was about the fan putting the phone in his face. And again, I blame the fan from the standpoint of don't leave your seat, stay in your seat. Like I said, like it's just that simple. Just like the security guard told him, if you had been in your seat, this wouldn't have happened. This had no chance of happening if you stayed in your seat. So I think it's something that the NBA should look into in regards to. Again, I don't again from and I'll say this too. I don't understand why you would want to record James Harden or record an NBA player walking into the locker room or walking out on the floor. I don't understand. I don't know what's that worth. Are you gonna put that on your YouTube page? Are you trying to I don't know, unless you're one of these weirdos who are gonna put that who just is obsessed with YouTube and wants to just do something for likes and views. I'm on YouTube right now, but I want people to watch this show, listen to this podcast. I want as many views as possible because I want people drawn to this podcast. Which is pretty normal for somebody doing what I do. But if you're somebody that records something and just puts it on YouTube just because think something's I think something's wrong with you. I see people will put anything on YouTube. They record car crashes, fights, just dumb stuff, just for a like or just for some attention. But again, fans, fans got to get together. These fans getting a little too comfortable, little too comfortable. Game 7 tonight, Pittsburgh. Excuse me, Game 5. I think it might go 7. Game 5, Pittsburgh, Washington, in DC. We'll see if the Capitals can. Now again, the Capitals did their job. They got home ice advantage back after being down. One game to nothing, won the next two. But again, home ice doesn't mean nothing to me in hockey. It really doesn't. I don't look at home ice as being a big deal in the sport of hockey. This series so far has been a classic. You see Wilson get the 3-game suspension for the hit for the game. Was it the game 3 hit? So that's not wasn't surprised. But this series, again, if you're the Capitals, you got a golden opportunity to really put your foot on Pittsburgh's necks and go up 3-1. Now Pittsburgh has to feel totally comfortable with this series. 2-2, they've won. They've been there, done that. All the pressure right now is back on the Capitals to win Game 5 and try to close it out in Game 6 in Pittsburgh, which I don't think they could do. I think the Capitals. I see two outcomes in this series. Either Pittsburgh in 6, or Pittsburgh in 6, Pittsburgh in 7, or Washington in 7. 3 outcomes. I cannot see any outcome where Washington wins this game in less than 7 games. I don't see them winning game tonight and then wrapping it up in Game 6. Even if they were to win tonight, I think Pittsburgh will force a Game 7. And at that point, to me, in a Game 7, you have to favor Pittsburgh. You would have to favor Pittsburgh. Washington's best chance might be to win tonight and to try to wrap it up in a Game 6. I think they have a better chance of winning Game 6 in Pittsburgh than they will a Game 7 at home, if that makes sense. I just don't see them beating Pittsburgh in a Game 7. But again, this series has been a great series so far. It looks like the winner of this series is going to be taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are in total control in their series up 3-1 against the Boston Bruins. A lot of people liked Boston to get to the Stanley Cup. But we know Tampa Bay is a very good team as well. So we'll see what happens with that particular series. Big week this week in regards to the attention received by one Kanye West in the comments he made about slavery, or whether it was, even you had last week, at the end of last week, he had an interview with Charlemagne from the Breakfast Club. So Kanye is back into the consciousness of the social media and of hip hop in general. Whatever hiatus he was on is completely over. There was a major. I apologize. Throat got a little dry there, but there was a lot of controversy and a lot of talk over what Kanye said about slavery, and the go-to would be this guy has mental, is suffering, has just had a breakdown. Wife was kidnapped. That was real, whether people want to believe it or not. That actually happened. His wife was kidnapped. Kim Kardashian West was kidnapped, and her life was on the line. So he has his mental breakdown. Mom passed a few years back. We know this, but I feel like in regards to Kanye, this is who he is, and this is who he has been for years. Like, he's never been somebody who cares about what you and I say about him after he says something outrageous or something or when he decides to go against the grain. And you look at the comments that he's made in the last week and a half, one about Trump, the other about slavery. So though you can't find two more hot button areas to comment on than Donald Trump and slavery, especially amongst African Americans. So what I didn't understand was, knowing this about Kanye West, the amount of just the reaction to what he said. Like, clearly, if somebody says that, let's say somebody not named Kanye West makes that statement, I'm going to look at that person and just be like, I'm not even going to debate with that person. I'm just going to look at you like, you just don't know what the hell you're talking about. You clearly are not up to speed on the history of slavery. Like, I'm clearly going to look at you like you don't know what you're talking about. Like my uncle used to tell me, so we used to have a number of conversations about everything, sports, politics, religion. And as a kid, you have a tendency to say some dumb shit. So it wouldn't, like, we would get into arguments about different subjects. But here's where he would just be sending me the message of, I'm not even going to engage this argument with you. What you just said, don't tell nobody else. Don't say that to nobody else outside this room ever. And he would be joking but serious. Like, just don't what you just said, don't let nobody else know that. Don't say that shouldn't leave this room. That's how asinine and preposterous what you just said. In other words, go do some more research and then come back to me. Because I'm not even going to engage with. This is not even an argument at this point. Like arguing Michael Jordan versus Greg Anthony. Like, if somebody said Michael Jordan versus Greg Anthony, you'd be like, what? You'd be like, come on, man. We're not doing this. No, I'm not falling for this trap. And as a kid, I wasn't trying to say stuff just for the sake of saying stuff. I just on that particular subject, whatever drew him to say that, I clearly just did not know what the hell I was talking about. Just didn't know. So I look at Kanye West in the same vein, like, for slavery, in terms of the subject matter, he does not know what the hell he's talking about. Mind you, this guy, keep in mind, he's a musical genius. He's not all knowing on all things. Like, that's what we gotta keep in mind about Kanye. So don't allow Kanye's word. Like, words do carry power, but I believe the reaction and the energy from the reaction can even create more power for those words. So we know Kanye West is at the point now, right here, right now. He's back that he's going to say things to draw attention to himself. And I'll make a sports connection with this. Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley comes out. I want to punch Draymond Green in the face. You know damn well. I know it. Charles Barkley knows it. Draymond Green knows it. Everybody with a half a brain knows that he's not going to ever lay hands on Draymond Green. But this is who Charles Barkley is. This is who he has been for the better since he's been on TNT for the last, I think, 18 years. He's going to say something to try to spark conversation, to try to spark a reaction. And there was a time that I used to fall for it and be like, "Did you hear what Charles Barkley just said?" Now it's like, oh, it's just Charles Barkley. And again, we like the media. I don't even blame the media. I mean, I don't even blame Charles Barkley at this point. I just blame people who react to him and the media for giving him, for thinking that Charles Barkley is the expert on all things, basketball and non-basketball related. Like Charles, Trayvon Martin. What do you think about that? Charles, what do you think about the Confederate flag? Charles, the ozone layer is terrible. I mean, it doesn't matter what subject matter. It doesn't matter what what we're talking about. We have to find Charles. The media has to find Charles Barkley and get his comments, or get his thoughts. So again, you can give people your energy in terms of your reaction. I would stay away from it myself. Like I'm not overreacting to Charles Barkley. I'm not overreacting to. I'm barely reacting to Kanye West. Like it's content. I can talk about it in terms of content on my program, and it is content worthy to discuss. But is it worth me getting upset, or even having any type of emotional reaction to? Nah, not really. I'm good. 347-215-6180. When we return, family business. We'll talk about that and much, much more in this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. 23 minutes after the 1 o'clock hour as we discuss the world of sports and cop culture. Big piece came out this week on ESPN, ESPN.com. Ramona Shelburne and Michael Wright in terms of what's going on with Kawhi Leonard and the San Antonio Spurs. Some of the stuff you probably already would have known about in terms of rumors and speculation. Some of the stuff was quite interesting in terms of the dynamic of how much power his uncle really has in terms of his thought process, his decision making, and where he's at right now in regards to his relationship with the Spurs. I'll say this. Now, his father was shot 10 years ago, back in 2008. Apparently, his uncle has been the guy that he trusts, the most in regards to, just in life. Forget about basketball and forget about all business-wise, just in life. I get that aspect of it. But there has to be, LeBron James really changed the game in regards to athletes and power and going against the grain and not going typical with the agencies and doing his own thing. But remember, this LeBron James, this was to me planned by LeBron James and calculated by LeBron James. And even with that said, he still had people who knew about the business of sports agencies, basketball. He surrounds himself with the likes of Jay-Z and Warren Buffett. So he's surrounding himself constantly with people who understand the landscape. Leon Rose, World Wide West, those guys understood how things work in the world of sports and with in regards to how business operates. This thing that's going on with Kawhi Leonard is not has not been planned out. This is more of a reaction to a seemingly freak injury in terms of or maybe possibly a diagnosis from the San Antonio doctors. And I'm telling you right now, if you're Kawhi Leonard, you have to have your own voice on this, on what's on this. You know, you can have great intentions and still make bad decisions. I'm not saying his uncle doesn't want the best for him. A lot of people are trying to paint his uncle as greedy. A lot of people trying to paint his uncle as a guy who is trying to take advantage of Kawhi Leonard's popularity, or who Kawhi Leonard, the basketball player, in terms of trying to build up his own marketing company and trying to be a leech off Kawhi Leonard. I don't know that necessarily to be true, because I understand in working in the field that I work in, education, that it does take a lot for a man to take in somebody that is not his son and practically raise him. So let's not dismiss that dynamic of this story. Like he did practically raise Kawhi Leonard. It has been his closest confidant for the last 10 years. Kawhi Leonard is only 26 years old, so basically since high school. Since high school, he has been the closest person in Kawhi Leonard's life. You cannot dismiss that when talking about discussing this situation. So I'm not trying to make Uncle Dennis out to be some guy who came out of nowhere, who all of a sudden only knows Kawhi Leonard because Kawhi Leonard is a famous basketball player and is making tens of millions of dollars. That's not the case whatsoever. But if you are Kawhi Leonard, you have got to separate. In this case, you need to separate family from business, because it could be a sense that just Uncle Dennis just does not understand business. And again, you could have best intentions and make bad decisions, which can equal out to poor results. So, if you're Kawhi Leonard, um, so I think, in the best interest of for Kawhi Leonard is finding some business some people that know about the business in terms of whether it's contract negotiations, things of that nature. And I think you wanted. I think, and this eventually will happen. I think the Spurs organization, Greg Popovich will sit down with Kawhi Leonard, and really think about like, look, we have a franchise player. Okay, we have a guy who's 26 years old who is at worst, when healthy, the third best player in the league. At worst, some people think he's right behind LeBron. I would say at worst the third best player behind LeBron and Durant. He's 26 years old. He's playoff proven. He's been in he's won a Finals MVP. These guys do not fall off trees. Like, you can go San Antonio can go 20 or 25 years without finding another Kawhi Leonard easily. So Popovich is not going to be around forever, which makes Kawhi Leonard that much more important for that franchise. Makes him even more valuable moving forward.
60 seconds.
So, look, again, I'm sticking to the scenario that I've thought about for the past couple of weeks with this situation, or the past couple of months. Either they're going to sign him to the $219 million extension this summer, or they're going to trade him this summer. He will not go into next year as a flat out. They will not let him reach free agency next year, and he will not be moved in the trade deadline come next February 2019. It's not going to happen. So either he'll be traded this summer or sign. And right now, if I had to guess, I would have to guess more than likely that he will be traded. And again, I know $219 million is a lot of
10
money on the
seconds.
table, but right now, considering where they're at, and the disdain that seems to be between himself and the San Antonio Spurs, or not himself, but Uncle Dennis and the San Antonio Spurs, I think he ends up in another uniform come this summer. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I will see you next time. Enjoy your weekend. So long.